Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sunfire Fire channel. Once you step in the fire, you just might get burnt. How's everyone doing today? Okay, so I wanted to do some more stuff that's not always talking about introverted stuff. Introverted or empath stuff. And so I wanted to talk about I just got finished reading this book. It's called Players, and it's The Mysterious Identity of William Shakespeare by Bertram Fields. I got it for $8 when I was in Maine. I mean, if you me and my mom have a birthday around the same time, so we just pick a day that's close and celebrate both of our birthdays at the same time. So hers is on the 21st, mine's on the 25th, and we celebrated our birthday on July 19th. And as we were going through Maine, naturally, since I love books, I was like, a bookshop. And that's how I usually get excited for stuff. I'm gonna make this about being introvert right now. That's how I can get out of the house. I have a plan in my head that I'm gonna at least do this. And the thing that I love is going to bookstores when I go out. And say I'm just gonna look, and then I buy something. I just say I'm just gonna look, but I always go out buying something. And I love history books. And yeah. So we know very little about Shakespeare, the man, and this book has basically, I've heard like there are different rumors about him, but I didn't know there were so many rumors about him. Again, because since there's little information about him, people love to speculate about him. And so there are just so many rumors. I heard about the rumors, but I didn't know there were so many that came up. It's like, there could be Shakespeare could be so many people. He could be, he could have been the queen. Well, I heard that one. There could have been. I heard that there were several people who called themselves Shakespeare, a group of people who they were connected, but they called themselves Shakespeare, so to make people think it was one person. But there are so many. It's like there's so many rumors. I heard he was gay. There was a Stratford man. He could have been. There are anti-strats and there are pro-strats, and he was born in Stratford, Avon, supposedly part of. I forget. I think it's the anti-strats or the pro-strats, because when I was reading, I got a little confused. I mean, it's a confusing book as well, because it's like there's so much information about what's what, and he's trying to see how all of these things hold up, all of these rumors hold up. So, like I was saying, he was supposedly born in Stratford upon Avon, and there's a Stratford man, and there's the playwright Shakespeare. There's Stratford Shakespeare and there's the playwright Shakespeare. The Stratford man could be Shakespeare, or he could just have the similar name, and people are getting confused with the playwright and the author and the poet. So there are so many things, and some people think he could possibly be gay. That was also a rumor that I was just shocked at. I mean, there were gay people then. And I didn't know Christopher Marlowe was also gay. If you don't know who Christopher Marlowe is, he was also a poet. They were friends too, mind you. And I knew that before I read this. And Christopher Marlowe was outwardly gay too, so that was the thing. And there's some speculation that Christopher Marlowe could have been Shakespeare, which didn't make any sense to me. But he addressed those rumors too. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, they could all be possible, but it just, all these rumors are just so far-fetched. Again, when you don't know that much information about someone, you just make up a bunch of these rumors. And what I wanted to say is that it's really interesting and it's really fun because he gives a breakdown of in the beginning he gives a breakdown of he gives a little history about Elizabethan age, and then a little bit into King James's a little bit into King James's reign, because he died during King James's reign, but obviously that was the Elizabethan King James was around the time that he was acting. And also, Christopher Marlowe was, at that time, Christopher Marlowe was a little bit bigger than Shakespeare. And it was funny, I was actually talking to a person on the train a few days ago about this. He asked me, do you like that book? And I said, yeah. And he talked about him and Christopher Marlowe. And I was like, back then, Christopher Marlowe was like the Beyonce and Shakespeare was like the Kelly Rowland. And now, and today, I'm saying today, and it says today that he's a lot more popular. Shakespeare is a lot more popular than Christopher Marlowe. And I've never read anything by Christopher Marlowe. And the reason why Shakespeare is a lot more popular is because his characters are a lot more in depth than Christopher Marlowe's. Again, I haven't read Christopher Marlowe's stuff yet. I've never read anything by Christopher Marlowe. Actually, I didn't even find out about Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe existed until like I was in college. Until I was in high school. So that's how little I knew about Christopher Marlowe. I only know the name. And they're more in depth, and they just resonate with the characters just resonate a lot more with a lot of people who read it. Like, I remember I read Richard III last year, and I think there are so many plays I have read by Shakespeare yet, and I think that is one of my favorite plays. Richard III, if you've read Richard III, or if you, there's the historical side of Richard III, like the actual thing, and then there's the play Richard III. Now, just a synopsis of Richard III. It's basically, this is going on during the War of the Roses. And
yes, I'll be back. Donald instead of way over East Milton.
Yes, Mom.
I'll be back.
Yeah, that's my mom. So basically, this is the War of the Roses, and I love it because he's technically he's the villain. He's the protagonist of the play, but he's the villain. Like I love it because it's just he's manipulating everyone, like, and that's what I love about his characters. I love Iago, and and I love Richard III. He manipulates everyone, and towards the end, you see how he's crumbling, and it's just like, wow. And it's just amazing to me how he could get on that. How Shakespeare knew how to do everything like that. And if you ever have seen Shakespeare in Love, Romeo and Juliet is basically the only play where it's actually showing true love, and like a man is not really showing how, sorry, Michael, not really showing that this woman's my property. Even though she loves me, I'm still treating her like my property. Yeah, Shakespeare is really good. I know it kind of sounds cliche. It's like, oh, she reads Shakespeare. It's like, but no, like, all girls love Romeo and Juliet because it's about love. It's like, no, actually, it's actually one of my least favorite plays. I mean, I still like it, but it's not my least favorite plays. And this year I just got finished reading Cymbeline. That play is crazy. And everyone says it's crazy. A lot of people say it's hard. That's one of his hard to read plays because there's so much happening, and he uses a lot of different. His characters speak in a different way than most of his other characters in other plays, so that's why it's a little harder. And a lot's happening. I can't tell you. I'm not going to tell you all like the synopsis of it because there's so many. There are so many things happening in that play, and it's a good thing I was in a book club when I was reading that play because we were both reading. We were really reading out loud, and it made it's a lot better than just reading it in your head. You can read it in your head. I'm not saying you can't, but it's just better when you're reading in a book club. And you're reading out loud. You have people who are the different people are the different characters, so you know where you are in the story. More than like when you're just reading in your head, it's your own voice speaking for every character. So you're not gonna know when you stopped or when you started, really, unless you really pay attention to like the characters that you're reading. So I remember Boston does Shakespeare in the Park. I saw Cymbeline, and it was just hilarious because there's a scene in the play where the one of the main woman, the princess, she dresses up as a man, and her servant gives her these clothes. It's supposed to be in first century Britain. I think it's first century Britain, or it's close to first century. And he gives her these clothes, and he describes them, but it sounds like it's a 15th century man's suit, not a toga. A 15th century man's suit. But and so, and the way they go to Italy and France, and like the way Shakespeare is also describing Italy and France, it's like it sounds like 15th century. Again, it sounds like 15th century France and Italy, and it's just like, and so what I love what the Shakespeare in the Park did in Boston, they they had a bunch of costumes for everything. They had World War One costumes. They had Victorian England costumes for the king and queen. They had old Roman army costumes like 79 BC, and it was pretty funny, and I loved it too. The thing is that some people think that Shakespeare had up to a 6th grade education, and people don't know if he ever. People don't know if he was what class. People don't really know what class he was. So, if you know Shakespeare, there's some Latin in his. There's always going to be some Latin in his plays, and Latin and Greek were more of something that a higher upper class person would know, or just he also has French and like Italian in his stuff as well. And some people think like only people who are in upper class were able to go to school and learn Latin and Greek, which is upper class. And then on top of that, if you were fluent in other languages, that's crazy. Like, and for someone who only had a 6th grade education to do all that, that's crazy. And there have been child prodigies since forever. I mean, take Mozart. He was a child prodigy. I mean, a lot of wonderful stuff can happen in life, and that's cool. And also, he had knowledge of royalty language and peasantry language as dialect as well. So if he was upper class and some people would think, oh, maybe he disguised. Some people in the book, the author says that some people may think that he disguised himself as a peasant and walked around talking to peasants. So that's why he knows. He like in his real life, he knows the royal family, and he knows to talk to earls and dukes and everything. But then he goes to disguise himself. And they don't know if he was in the military either, because he knows there's always a war going on, or like something of violence going on. So he knows a lot of military tactics, especially if you are familiar with British history. They had they were very strong in the Navy, and that's why. If you know British history, you will know that they prided themselves on winning on the Spanish Armada. That was when they beat the Spanish Armada. They prided themselves. They were in Alida, that was around when Richard III was created, and I think I would love to know more about Shakespeare, and that's why I picked up this book. And this was made in 2005. I wish I knew about it sooner, because back then I didn't really love history, and I didn't really love reading Shakespeare, but now I do. And yeah, just I really like Shakespeare, I'm glad I read this book, because even though it still left me with a lot of questions, I got confused very easily, because there's so many. Since there's so many, he did the best he could He did the best he could with so many people speculating, so with so many rumors going around. He did the best he could, and he was breaking in. Like I really commend it because he put a lot of effort into this book. He was breaking down each scenario, like, well, this could have happened. This could have happened. A lot could have happened because we barely know about it. We don't. I think, like, I remember when I was reading Cymbeline, the guy who created the book club, he brought in a copy of Shakespeare's will, and it looked like somebody wrote it for him and then he signed it. Some people think that he was about to like he was very sick and he was on his deathbed, so that's his writing. The way he signed his thing was very scribbly. And then in this book, there are some people saying, well, he might have didn't know how to spell his name, because in this book there are so many variations. There's Shakespeare, there's Shakespeare, there's Shakespeare, there's Shakespeare Shaks, and then there's Shakespeare, there's Shakespeare Shax. So people didn't know. So there are some people saying he didn't know how to spell his name. There are some people saying that he did know how to spell his name. He was just dying. And then like, I don't know what happened. And some people don't. And there were some people saying he didn't know how to read or write. And it's just, or maybe he taught himself and he taught himself the wrong way how to spell his name. And it's just like, if he didn't know how to read and write, how did he write all those poets? Again, that's what there could be. That's why there could be two Shakespeares that people are getting confused. And we know a little about his father and his mother. We don't know that much about his father and his mother. And some people don't know if he was a Catholic or a Protestant, because during the Elizabethan time, she wasn't as bad as her cousin Mary, Bloody Mary. But she wasn't as bad as her cousin. As her cousin was a Catholic, and that's why she burned Protestants. But Elizabeth, she was a Protestant, and that's why people wanted her on the throne, and that's why and that's mainly the reason why she got on the throne, and why people supported her being on the throne. She wasn't as bad as her sister, but I mean, she did actually kill people, execute people for being Catholics, but most of the time she was just like, you can be Catholic, but when you're in public, you have to practice being a Protestant, and you have to go to church at a Protestant place, at a Protestant church. No, there aren't going to be any more Catholic churches. And so some people think that he was a Protestant, and some people think that he was a practicing Catholic, but he just didn't come out with it. But again, there's so much information, so much contradictions out there. You gotta read this book for you. This book, I mean, it's a lot of information. If you don't know a lot about Shakespeare, and I feel like I know at least a little bit more, even if there's a bunch of rumors. I feel like, and a bunch of contradictions and a bunch of stuff that could be hoopla. I feel like I know a little more about I feel like I know a little bit more about him. I got to know his environment more than him. And so I mean, yeah, you can fill in your own pieces of like what his life was like, because that's what everyone else did, and that's why that's why Fields is breaking it down in the book. Everyone has their own opinion, but you can make your own opinion about it, but you understand the environment that he was living in at that time, and the environment that was made for him by his parents at that time. So you understand like why you understand more like why stuff was happening like that at that time, and you understand why maybe this is probably why these people were thinking about that. This is probably why these people thought that that Shakespeare was this. Anyway, I'm not going to be here on that long, but I just wanted to say again, this book is called Players by Bertram Fields. The Mysterious Identity of William Shakespeare. And sorry for the hair, guys. I was taking out my hair, so. But I wanted to come do this video because I love books. And I'm probably going to do more of these videos. So, bye for now.